tonight, so you want to check that out for sure. And please bear with us as we try to monitor all the activity. If you have a direct question for Kasey, we're going to use the Q&A link, and we'll do a Q&A option at the very end, so she can build some momentum and kind of teach us all about remote learning tonight. For those of you interested in earning 1 hour of professional development credit, another one of our colleagues, Dr. Crystal Brody, is the chair of our advanced programs, and she has set up a private Facebook group, and that's going to be our home base for PD credit. And I will put the link in the chat box before the end of the session. It's really a 3-tier process. At the end, we'll have a very short poll question for you. I'll put a link to a Google survey, and then I'll put a link to the Facebook group. And once you go to the Facebook group, you'll find a prompt there, and it will kind of walk you through what you need to do to qualify for the e-certificate that you will get. And you'll be able to take that certificate to your local district and maybe get credit. If you're not on Facebook, please send me an email, and we'll find a way to get you the information you need to qualify for the e-certificate. So we have that to look forward to. Before we turn it over to Kasey, I do have a welcome video from our new Dean of Education, Dr. Jason Reeves. Unfortunately, he could not be here tonight. He's actually attending a school board meeting in Eastern Kentucky. So if I can share my screen, I want to play just a real short video from him, and we'll try to get going. If I can find my desktop. There it is.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Jason Reeves, and on behalf of the Georgetown College Department of Education, I'd like to welcome each of you to tonight's professional learning opportunity, which is being sponsored by our department. As a means of saying thank you to our many P through 12 partners across the state for their ongoing support, the Department of Education here at Georgetown will be providing a series of free professional learning opportunities for both educators and administrators on current topics such as engagement, leadership, and student achievement. These are topics that all of us are dealing with during the COVID pandemic. Our hope is that after each of these sessions, both educators and administrators will have gained much needed support and informed direction as all of us manage the unknown. A special thanks must also be given to Dr. Greg Goins, Director of Educational Leadership here at Georgetown College, for his own leadership in developing and coordinating each of the professional learning sessions, which will be hosted throughout the remainder of the 2020-2021 academic year. Thank you, Greg, for your commitment to the P through 12 educational community. I would also like to share with you that our department recently completed a very successful reaccreditation effort with the Kentucky Educational Professional Standards Board and with the Council of Accreditation for Educator Preparation. Our continued appreciation goes out to the many P through 12 school partners who were a part of this effort and share in our success. On a final note, we are currently accepting students into our graduate education programs at the initial certification, master's, and rank 1 levels. For more information, please check out our website at www.georgetowncollege.edu.
So thanks for your patience, guys. We really appreciate Dr. Reeves and his support with this endeavor. And I know you guys are fired up and ready to hear from Kasey Bell, SMI. She really needs no introduction. She's the beauty and the brains behind the Shake Up Learning brand. You want to follow her at shakeuplearning.com. So let's give a big Kentucky welcome to Kasey Bell.
Hey, y'all. I am super excited to be here and to be part of this. I love Kentucky, by the way. I was at Kasey this past year. In fact, that was the last face-to-face event that I was a part of this year. But love, love, love everyone that I have met and connected with. And I know I've already seen lots of familiar names in the chat. So thank you so much for joining me today. I did drop a link, the long link to the slides, but this is the shortened one. So shakeup.link/1119. So that's 1119. That's today's date. Tried to make it something easy and short. But just in case you have any trouble with those shortened links, I put the full long one into the chat for you. But I've got lots of links and resources and templates and other things that you will probably want to come back to today. So I have to tell you that the timing for this, I'm on Central Time, so it's not even late here, but I do tend to warn people that I am definitely better in the morning than I am in the afternoon. So by the end of the day, after I've been talking all day, I tend to make up new words. So y'all just go with it. I might invent something completely new, and we're just going to go with it today. But in all seriousness, talking about remote learning, which is today's main topic and probably top of mind for everyone. I know that you've just been told that you're going back to that, I believe, and a lot of states are experiencing this in hybrid models and mixed, and whatever word your school decides to call it. Remote learning was just kind of what came to the top of all the different names. And I have to tell you that this particular presentation started out based on a post that I wrote in April. So this little infographic you see right here, we're going to break it down, but things have obviously changed since April. And I'm going to give you a little bit of context and kind of where I think we are with this. But keep in mind, no one's really an expert on this yet because what we're doing is brand new. So I definitely want everyone to take a deep breath and give yourself a pat on the back, because just because some people may be better at certain aspects of things or better with certain types of technology does not mean that anyone by any means was prepared for what 2020 had to offer us this year. But just in case we haven't met, again, my name is Kasey Bell. This slide has links to my blog, Shake Up Learning, and all those little icons link back on social media. I would love to connect and learn with you even after today. If you have questions or you want to check out any of the resources or podcasts that I share, I am Google certified and I spend a lot of time sharing lots of Google resources. You'll find at least a few have made it into today's presentation, even though it's not technically a Google presentation. And most things can still be adapted for other platforms. So if you don't use Google, don't worry about it. Easy to transfer those over. Okay, so as I promised, this was based on a blog post that I wrote in April, giving these 12 practical tips. Well, you'll notice the name of this presentation is now 12 plus because it just keeps growing. So I keep adding. You're going to get more than 12. You're going to get some philosophical types of things, but you're also going to get some concrete templates, ideas, things that you can take and run with it. So tip number 1, and this one was something that I was taught early on: grace is greater than grades. And I don't know if any of you have listened to my podcast, the Shake Up Learning Show, but back in, wow, it might have been the end of February, it was really, really early on in the pandemic before it had come over here to the US. I interviewed a teacher friend of mine who is from Texas, but she was teaching at an international school in China. And she had just been quarantined. They were sent inside. Everybody was doing this remote learning thing in China. And she said, Kasey, I just have so many things that I want to share because the US is not prepared for this. She said, what everybody's talking about it's just not right. And so I had her on the podcast, and some of the things that she said to me really just set the stage for everything. And this was really my number one takeaway from Jennifer Pearson, which is her name. And so she was experiencing this both as a teacher, teaching her students in that international school, but as a parent having two of our own children who were working at home. And I'm sure many of you are seeing both sides of this as parents and as teachers with your own kids at home. But the thing is, we've never faced this problem before, and we need to make sure our priorities are in the right place. Although we have done various versions of this before, things are still new. Students, teachers, parents, people are scared. They're balancing these fears and anxiety with working and teaching from home. People are tired. We've got the what do you call it? The COVID anxiety and the COVID wear out. Everybody's just kind of done with it, but we got to hang in there, and we just have to remember that things are not perfect, and everybody needs just a little bit of grace to get through this. It's definitely more important than that grade, but I will say that making this statement back in April was very different than making this statement right now, because we have had time to make some adjustments, to get some policies in place. And I realize it looks different at different schools. So I'm sure you all have different ways that you're tracking things, but I do still think this is really important just to keep perspective on where we are. And of course, all of us, including me, need a little grace right now. This is it's new for all of us. Even though I've presented like this many times, it has different connotations right now. And it means so much more when we can model those things and have that engagement that we need in front of our students and our peers. Okay, number 2, prioritize social emotional needs. So another thing that has come to light through all of this is the emotional impact of what we've been going through. And I'm sure many of you have been experiencing this and are still experiencing this, but personally, this has taken a toll, right? It's not easy, and it's not easy on our students. And I think we have to remember that. And of course, social emotional skills have come to the forefront over the last few years, but I really think we have to make sure that we prioritize that, because if our students are not safe, if they're not emotionally secure, we're not going to get anywhere with the learning. So this has to come to the top. So I come back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. As soon as this topic came up, I immediately went back to all of my teacher training, and this really hit home in a new way in this moment as we think about meeting those basic needs that our students have. And for some students, school is their only safe space, and that worries me a lot. I know I have lots of teacher friends who say once we went into this home learning situation that there were students who completely dropped off the map, students we couldn't get in touch with, not even knowing if they're okay. And so if we can prioritize this, if we can find ways to make those connections with our kids by scheduling daily or weekly check-ins, even offering office hours is a great way to supplement that and to give kids a way to talk to you, to let you know what's going on, how they feel that day, what kind of mood they're in. And this is true of the littles all the way up. The little kids feel the stress, and they have different ways of expressing that as far as we go on up into the high school grade levels. Another idea that I got from Jen Pearson was she suggested recording a good morning video. So something that's just simple, but lets students see your face, see a positive attitude in the morning, kind of setting that foundation for a good day. And I really like this idea. I know that having the synchronous interactions great, but a lot of kids may not be able to access the synchronous. So be sure that we record and have those available. I'm sure most of you know what I was referring to with office hours, but just to kind of clarify, if you set up, say, hey, I'm going to be online from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. I'm going to have here's the link. Join me if you have questions. I'm here. So, it's just something like that. I've also heard of a lot of teachers who will have students sign up for office hours, but I also think it's kind of comforting for students to know just in a last minute situation that they could contact their teacher in a way and get that face-to-face virtual interaction as opposed to just sending a message or an email. And another idea, I've seen this floating around a lot, trying something simple like a joke of the day, funny video of the day, or games just to keep the emotions lighthearted because we don't know what's going on. We don't know how stressful their home might be. We don't know if someone might be sick or how scared our students may be. So finding ways just to kind of lighten the mood to make those connections will be something that I think we should prioritize in this moment. Social emotional check-ins can look a million different ways. I have a screenshot here of one that I found online. I don't even know who made it to give credit, but I didn't make this. But just using emojis is something simple, especially for the little ones, to kind of let you know how they're feeling today. What's your mood today? You feel good? Are you upset? What's going on? And you could even have them, define their own emoji or something like that. But as they progress into the older grades, you obviously can make this like an open-ended Google form or ask for more information. I've got some other templates I'm going to get to in a moment where you can add it to other types of checklists and things too, but just to have that quick check-in to make sure, hey, everything's okay. I'm ready to learn. That's what we want. We want to make sure that these kids are ready to learn so that when we get frustrated, we know why, so that we can help them. Number 3, this one also came from Jen. Choose a platform and stick with it. I know many schools were scrambling when we shut down back in the spring, and a lot of schools didn't have anything in place. And so they had to find new tools, whether that was going with Google Classroom or Canvas or setting up something else. But we need that one-stop shop. We need that one place where students, parents, whoever is involved can get the information, get the assignments, and get that done. Now, Jen told me about this because her own daughter, during their lockdown in China, her daughter, who was in high school, had been given a whole new assignment to do in, I believe it's in OneNote. And they had never used OneNote ever before. But suddenly in this home learning environment, she was doing something and she actually failed an assignment just because she didn't know what she was looking at. She didn't know where to click. And so that was a little bit difficult. So if we have that one platform, not to change the game in the middle, just to keep things as clean as possible, be consistent, use the same communication platform for everything if you possibly can. Of course, this is also going back to any administrators who may be listening as well. We want to make sure that we're not sending different messages from different platforms. A lot of parents, have been online complaining about all the email that they get, and they get a, separate email from every single teacher, which may sound like a good thing, but sometimes we also need to come together to make sure that we're all consistent in sending the same message. Keeping those assignments and resources in that one location, that one-stop shop that I mentioned. If you're using Google Classroom, I put a link in there to the Google Classroom cheat sheets that I have. Those are completely free. You can download those from my website, but there are 2 sets. There's one for teachers and there's one for students. I was asked, Kasey, why didn't you make one for parents? Well, parents don't technically have a login. So if they're logging in with their students' information. So that student cheat sheet would be for those parents. If you have parents helping the littles use Google Classroom at home. Tip number 4, sometimes offline is greater than online. So just because we are moving to a remote learning situation doesn't mean that every activity that students complete has to be digital. And I'm the techie girl, y'all, but Zoom fatigue is legit, right? We're all sitting here watching this. And by the time we finish, every single one of us, you and me, will be kind of tired of staring at a screen. It's not something that's easy to do. So I think we have to prioritize those activities, not just for screen time, but also for digital equity. It's still a significant problem, and we must give students some offline options. And I say that not just about the equity in terms of what they have access to at home, but we have to remember that there is still a digital divide in terms of skill sets, that students may have gotten that device sent home, but they still may have not had the same level of exposure as every other student and may not be as savvy, and parents may not know. So we want to make sure that we're finding the right balance. So even though students with devices and an internet connection shouldn't spend all day in front of a screen, I have seen so many videos posted of even, really young students who were expected to sit in a seat for, 6 hours a day. And let's find some flexibility in that, because there are lots of ways to get kids off the screen, to get hands on, moving around, finding those offline options when possible. And of course, the stress of this on parents, teachers, and students is tremendous. So this can also simplify some things so that everything isn't as crazy. I'll throw in another tip too that I got from Catlin Tucker. I talked to her on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about the offline stuff. And this was the way she described it, and I really thought this was great. If you're giving students something to do offline, everybody's like, well, okay, Kasey, but they still have to turn it in somehow. So how do they turn it in? And she said to teach them to be documentarians. So they're like taking pictures of everything as they go with whatever device they have, but they're documenting the process, even though they're not sitting here in a synchronous environment. Oh, there we go. The other thing that I added, there's one more link down here. I interviewed Laura Steinbrink back in the spring, and she was using some of my choice board templates when her students went into remote learning or home learning. And Laura teaches in a remote school district in Missouri. And the students were so spread out, there's not internet access everywhere. And she said, Kasey, sending devices out wasn't even an option. We didn't even have them. So teachers were sending home paper packets. And Laura said, I'm going to give them a choice board. And on that choice board, which if you click on that link, you can see what she did with this. She gave them both options, online and offline. So building in student choice, but also giving them that offline and online option can be helpful for students who just frankly can't do it online, but also to break up the screen time. Tip number 5, use a daily or weekly checklist. I think for the most part, what emerged during the first school shutdown was this weekly checklist idea. I think it became very handy. I'm sure many of you were using these as well, and I think they're great. So depending on what you teach, what grade level and the age, a simple daily or weekly checklist can simplify things for you, students and parents. Depending on how much synchronous time is required by your school district, giving students, hey, here's what we're doing this week. Here's what's due on Friday. Just making it clear, because especially the older students who may be better at managing their own time can know exactly what they have to get done. You can put this in a Google Doc. You could list it in the assignment that you post on Google Classroom or in Canvas. Or you can get even more creative, because there are lots of really cute and free templates out there. And here is one of them. Do y'all know about Slides Mania? Slidesmania.com, which, by the way, if you click on this little image, you can go get this little weekly planner here that has a different slide for each day of the week. And then on these slides, there's a spot to add your instructional video, to explain your lesson, to give your instructions, add pictures, whatever you want, to organize it in a slide deck that's ready to go. And so, by the way, you can get the PowerPoint or Google Slides version of this. Love it. Slides Mania has probably become one of my favorite little resources in 2020. And they have an entire education section. So if you haven't experienced this, it is definitely worth the time to go. Don't reinvent the wheel. Nobody needs to make these. Just go grab a copy. Slidesmania.com, like I said, is the main site, and that template that I just showed you, I linked separately as well. But they have other ones too. There are lots of different versions and different ways that you can use that. But of course, do what works for you. But having that checklist, especially just to eliminate questions, students will know exactly what's due. I can't remember if I put this on another slide, but another thing that has come up is students having optional work, enrichment. So separating the must do and the can do on that list can be really useful too, because I know we were all kind of shocked when some students asked for more work because they were bored at home. So being able to let them progress on to the next learning goal or giving them some enrichment can also be really handy to include in these checklists. This is another example. So this one right here is from Rebecca Madrid, and it's third grade, but I think it can easily be adapted for other grade levels, up or down. And it is a Google Doc. If you click here, you can use the template and go add it to your drive and edit it. But what I liked is she fit a lot of different things in here. So she's got that little social emotional check-in. How are you feeling today? And, just to highlight one, setting a goal. And then she's got the must do and those can do items that I was talking about. So here's the stuff I have to do. And then here's the stuff I can do if I have extra time. And then she even added, these extra little parts down here for chores at home or what I'm grateful for today. And then kind of encouraging some exercise and getting outside, which I thought was pretty creative too. So lots of different ways that we can adjust these. Number 6. Now you'll see the little screenshot in the corner, and you can see I'm kind of adjusting the wording. Originally, this came from Jen Pearson, and this was exactly what she said: reduce the workload by at least half. And that sounds super scary, but I want you to think about what she really meant by that, because a lot of times we fill the day with busy work, and it might be meaningful in pieces, but more doesn't equal rigor. And so we want to make sure we're getting the best bang for the buck, because the school day cannot be replicated online. And so many schools are trying to do this. And in my opinion, this is the wrong philosophy to have, that we have to think differently about the entire process and what we are doing with our students. But I want you to think about the work that you're giving students to make sure you are connecting the dots directly to those learning goals, and not just trying to replicate what you would do in a face-to-face classroom. We have to kind of let that go, that we're not just, oh, we're going to take everything we would normally do. This is reinventing the wheel, which is why it's so hard. Reduce the workload, not the rigor. Ditch the busy work. And, just make sure that you're thinking about, okay, what is the value of this assignment for my students? Is it because I've got to give them so many assignments a week? Or is it because there's really some great learning that can come out of this? Number 7, it's not about the technology, y'all. This one is probably pretty strange hearing from me, but as much as I love my techie stuff and my gadgets, I love technology, everything that we are talking about is not about the tech. It is still very much about the learning, everything that we do. Just because we are making something digital doesn't mean that kids are going to learn. And that's still our bottom line. That's still what we're trying to do. So we have to think about how these tools can enhance and engage the learning, and honestly, not make it more difficult, because sometimes technology can do that. One thing that happened in the spring, some have held on until now, but a lot of companies made their paid programs free, which was great. But I was very hesitant, and I was kind of warning teachers back in the spring, don't try to jump into all those new tools. Remember how we already said we want to be consistent. We don't want to keep changing platforms, but also we don't want to get caught in the middle of, oh, it's not free anymore, and I've been relying on this. I've created so many resources in this. So I don't want teachers to end up in that situation where they have to pay for something because some company has decided, oh, it's not going to be free anymore, which those things happen too. So we want to stick to our tried and true tools that support and enhance learning, which is one of the reasons why I always talk about Google, because it is reliable and I know what I'm getting and I know how it works. Number 8, record teacher videos. Now, this seems like a duh moment, but even though we spend a lot of time in situations like this webinar where we're on the screen and we're getting that synchronous information, it is very worth your time to click that record button, even during a synchronous situation. Of course, make sure you have permission to record if you have students' faces or anything on the screen, but you never know what's going to happen when the internet's going to go down, when something's not going to work. And if you've got that recorded, if that student happened to lose connection, you don't have to repeat yourself. It's kind of like cloning yourself when you record your videos. All teacher videos should be recorded so students who cannot attend live don't feel left out. Even if it's that good morning video, even if it's that, that touch point, just to make sure they're okay. That's why those recordings are so powerful. Of course, we want to follow the privacy and safety laws as well as your school's policies when you record these. But if teachers are willing to record their lessons or good morning video, let's just make sure that every child gets a chance to see it. That you never know what that one little thing might do for a student. Number 9, this is going to sound like a duh moment too, but give detailed directions. And I mean detailed. Context in an online environment is completely lost. Those things that you explain face to face in front of your students, it just doesn't come across the same way online. Whether they're distracted or they don't understand it, but context just gets lost. So without you there by their side, students have to have more detailed directions than usual. So, I mean, this will save you time in the long run if you take time to do that. And this takes me to another post that I did a couple years ago on how to package digital assignments, because for me, this was the number one reason to put things online when you didn't have to put them online, but to put them online so everything was in one place and I didn't have to repeat myself. If a student had a question, it's online, it's there. Every question would be answered. And if it wasn't, I would go edit it and make sure it was there. So I put this together with 10 things to include in your digital assignment package. So, and what I mean is, like, if you're creating an assignment in Google Classroom or Canvas or Schoology, whatever you happen to use, that one-stop shop, that's where you're going to include all of these things. So number 1 is to give each assignment a dedicated number. That's the tip I got from Alice Keeler many years ago with Google Classroom. And it just gives you a reference. It makes things easier instead of the, hey, miss, you know that thing we did? Okay, let's find the number, because the way we name our assignments can be very in the moment and subjective. We don't always remember the exact words, things like that. But with a number, you can also tie that back to your grade book. And if you're using something like Google Classroom where these files are created in Google Drive, guess what? They're all magically in the correct order because those numbers are added in front of the file names. So it's pretty awesome. Number 2, those detailed directions that I mentioned. Remember, context gets lost. Students need lots of info. This might even be a video. It might be a link to an entire video. But keep in mind, even though a lot of people like the videos, people like me, I don't like to watch videos. I can scan text and read text so much faster than watching a video. So if I'm given the choice, I'm going to read the text, but I am a textual learner. So keep in mind, those multiple modalities will also help differentiate for your students. Number 3, include the student-friendly learning goal. Answer that question. Why are we doing this, Miss Bell? Well, I want you to be able to know or to be able to do, just to add that information. That also helps parents. So if parents are there on the side trying to help students with assignments, they understand the goal in this. Explain how it will be assessed and include a rubric if you have one. So it should never be a question to me. It should never be a question of how a student will be assessed. How it will be graded is how they're going to ask you. But that was a big mistake that I made early on in my teaching career, is just kind of surprising students. Oh, I didn't know you were going to take off points for that. No, no, no. Let's be upfront. Let's let them know what's expected. And number 5, to explain those work time expectations. So when we were in a face-to-face environment, my students would always be like, but Miss Bell, I thought you were going to give us more time in class to finish this. They're always, my middle schoolers were always playing me. No, you didn't think that, because guess what? I had the time written on there, and I told you I would give you some work time here or there, but especially in a remote environment, we need to make sure they understand when they are expected to work on these things. Number 6, again, just making that clarification when you have the option, like in Google Classroom, to include the due date and time. If you have students collaborating, be sure you have some reason behind the collaboration, especially during remote learning. Collaboration, one of my number one skills for the 21st century, but we can't just throw them into groups because it sounds like it won't be as boring. We got to make sure that we're giving them some guidelines on how that collaboration works, or cooperation. It may not be full collaboration. Number 8, explain the turn-in process. So many of you have been kind of back and forth already, and you've probably established this. I know I'm talking a lot about Google Classroom, but whatever platform you use, how do they submit their assignments? And just adding that in there for new students, for students who maybe went from face-to-face to online. We've got a lot of things that are turning around, but just make that clear. All you got to do is copy and paste that into your assignment and reuse it over and over again. Number 9, explain to what they can work on if they finished early. So in the remote learning environment, that would be the can-do assignments. But, in the face-to-face environment, there was not an option to play a game in my classroom. I quickly learned that my students would rush through assignments and not do a good job if they knew they got to do some kind of reward or game. So if you finished early, I'm going to make sure you did it correctly. And then you're going to be allowed to do this enrichment activity or move on to the next learning goal. Number 10, that's just kind of that reminder out of all of those other 9 things, to include all the attachments and links that students are going to need. So that is the 10 things to include in your digital assignment package. I hope that helps you clarify and really just streamline things as you prepare for this. I also did a post a year or 2 ago called 7 Ways to Rethink Digital Assignments. I since updated it this summer to rethink digital assignments in a post-COVID world, because it was very much a thing that we needed to revisit in this moment. So just because you make a lesson digital doesn't mean that it's going to work the same way. And I think so many teachers have experienced this. Oh, well, this was my favorite lesson to teach in my classroom. I'm just going to, put my little worksheet online and I'm going to do this. And it just doesn't work that way. They're not equals, and they shouldn't be equals. So this is the time for us to rethink, to do things better, to do things we couldn't do before. To have access to this technology gives us an opportunity. And that's what I've been trying to say to a lot of teachers. This moment, as hard as it is a moment for us to make meaningful changes in education that we've needed for decades. So if we can put, our positive thinking caps on, have that growth mindset, then we really can not only rethink at the classroom level and our assignment level, but where we're going with this and how we can push this in the right direction while we have this opportunity. So one of the things that I talk about in my books is this digital tool continuum. There's a lot of models out there like TPAC and SAMR and things like that. And oftentimes I feel like teachers feel overwhelmed by that. So I like to keep things a little bit more simplistic. And I want us just to think about how we can do new things with digital tools. Like I said, we're not just digitizing our analog assignments. Many of you may have heard me say that I get tired of teachers asking me how to put a worksheet in Google Classroom, because there's probably a million other ways that we could reinvent that assignment instead of just trying to digitize it. And oftentimes we make things more difficult when we just try to digitize it. So thinking of the opportunities that we have to do things we couldn't do with paper, that we couldn't do before we had technology. Using digital tools to get information, not just to give it to students. Like, I'm giving you information right now through my Google slide deck, but we can also use this technology to check for understanding, to demonstrate learning, to give and get feedback, comments, ideas, reflection, and make sure that we're getting as much as we're giving as teachers. Giving timely feedback is even more important in a fully online environment. Google Classroom and other Google applications give us lots of ways to leave comments, whether we're leaving private comments in Google Classroom to talk to our students, or if we're just commenting in a Google Doc, or we may have students who are giving peer feedback. That feedback is so much more important in this moment because they don't have you by their side. That's the equivalent of having you by their side. When you can just give them that pat on the back, you can give them that high five, or you can give them that tiny bit of correction to make sure they're on course. Because when we can't see them and we don't know what they're working on, we can quickly lose and let them fall through the cracks. So the feedback loop is definitely more important in this moment. Providing instant collaboration can be difficult, as I mentioned earlier, because you have no control over that home environment. I saw a lot of teachers sharing some really great ideas, but in reality, what students may be facing in that home environment could present a lot of barriers to collaboration, especially if you're having students do this on their own time. They may have limited connectivity. They may be sharing devices with other siblings, their parents. So just be very cautious about this. As I mentioned earlier, I am a fan of giving students choice, and my favorite way to do that is choice boards. And I've shared a lot of different ways to do this. I have an entire podcast episode and little ebook download where I walk through kind of all the different ideas and how to assess and some tips and things like that. But you can go to this link and get this free little ebook and learn more. So if you like doing things like tic-tac-toe choice board, which is my favorite, that's the one that Laura happened to use in her home learning choice boards. But there's lots of different ways that you can approach that. Using digital tools for formative assessment, not just summative. There are a million out there. I did this post a year or two ago called 20 Formative Assessment Tools. And, there's so much more than just the traditional Google form quiz or Kahoot. I kind of feel like we overuse some of those, but there are a lot of really creative ways to assess our students digitally and from afar. So, and by the way, this is links right here if you want to explore what those 20 tools are. The other thing that I feel like we have to think about in this moment is to use our limitations to push creativity, because sometimes the most creative ideas come out of the least amount of resources. So I know everyone here comes from, different schools, different backgrounds, different strengths, different weaknesses. And a lot of times all we see are the things we can't do. But sometimes we can do some amazing things with the very few resources that we have, because it does force us to be more creative. And I definitely think that's true of what we give our students options to do. So helping that push into the 4 C's and to get more creative with our students as well. And number 10, I've already kind of mentioned this, but to think carefully about that group work and collaboration. You want to make sure that it is the correct choice for whatever assignment that you're giving, that there's some meaning behind that collaboration or group work. I do like the fact that we can now do breakout rooms and facilitate those. It's not a perfect situation, but that does give us more of that facilitator role where we're not just kind of throwing kids out there. Um, and then make sure that we have purpose and guidelines and expectations. Number 11, fail forward. So, how many of you have made a mistake this year in your classroom or outside of your classroom? I have. Like there are so many things that we're learning as we're doing, and that's all we can do. Is just fail forward, to learn from those mistakes, to do better, to try again, and to have a growth mindset from where we are, that this is not a perfect situation. And I, Lord help me, I'm a perfectionist and nothing I do is ever perfect. It's just that I want it to be. And it's so hard. We have to let that go. It it is just killing teachers in this moment. And I pray for all of you every single day, because I don't want to lose good teachers because this is so hard. We have no control over what's going on at home. We have to accept that, try to interact, try to contact, but we don't know what's happening. But we have to have that growth mindset as we go. So just keep trying, keep improving, and support each other through this. If we can just stay positive, I do believe we can make some meaningful changes for whatever the new normal is that we come to. You will adapt and be flexible because you're an educator, and that's what you've always done. Teachers have always had to be extremely flexible. And this year we're doing back bends and we're wearing capes, but we're going to do it, y'all. We're going to get this together. Number 12. So this was the end of the original list here, but to practice self-care. And I know many things just closed that may have been your escape for self-care, but finding time to relax, exercise, pray, meditate, take a long bath, whatever it is that you can do to keep your stress and your anxiety down so that you can be there for your students. Take the time for yourself. I know it may be difficult, but you may even have to pencil that in on your calendar. I'm going to throw in a bonus tip here. This is something else that I've talked a lot about over the last few months, because I've seen a lot of misunderstanding about synchronous and asynchronous online learning. And this actually came from seeing a TikTok of a teacher who thought that asynchronous just meant that students were sitting right here, connected synchronously, but doing something different. And that's not exactly how I see it. So I firmly believe in this moment that asynchronous learning has a much bigger role because of how difficult the synchronous can be and how draining it can be to stare at a screen or someone talking on a screen. So making sure that we find the balance to do those things where every kid isn't doing the same thing at the same time. And this may be something you were already used to doing in a face-to-face environment where you had lots of different things going. One thing Catlin Tucker talks about is, creating digital stations, and that's not just for the littles. Anybody can have stations without physically going to a station. You've just got a different assignment that you're working on, a different theme, a different learning goal. Just finding those ways to break up the mundane as well. Again, I am not a fan of trying to replicate the entire class and entire school day on Zoom. I just don't think that's the solution. So finding ways to balance this. I put some examples in here just to kind of clarify a few of those things, where synchronous would be like what we're doing right now. We're in a live class. Students would have to be there at a certain time. We're all learning this at the same time. Asynchronously will be the recording. So whoever watches this recording is watching it at a different time. So just thinking about that and finding those ways to accommodate students, to differentiate for students, and to break up the screen time a little bit. I have a lot of examples in there. I know I'm quickly running out of time. I want to save a little bit for questions, but I do have some additional resources. I've got an entire remote learning resources page. Pretty much everything I've been sharing over the last few months is designed to help in whatever we face, blended, remote, hybrid, virtual, whatever you want to call it, in those things there. I also have an announcement for you. I am working on getting this out as soon as I can. I have a new book, Blended Learning with Google. It is currently in layout, expected to be finished any day at any moment, and I'm getting this out as soon as I can. I've also created what you see there, number 2, is a little supplement booklet called Google from A to Z, the Google glossary for teachers. So it is just like literally like the dictionary to Google tools. So it will be a great companion to the book or to anything else if you're using Google. And then that third part is the companion workshop, which is an online course to teach all of the blended learning strategies and how to use Google tools to support that. So if you're interested in that, because I don't have the dates yet, go sign up for the waitlist, blendedlearningwithgoogle.com. And I'll send you an email and let you know as soon as everything is released. I'm also working on a special bonus video if you order during the first 2 weeks, so that we can get everybody some lots of tips and resources and freebies with that. So there's the link again in case you missed it. And I'm going to check in. So did I have any questions pop up?
Kasey, there are several questions in the Q&A. Can you see those, or do we need to
Okay,
read those
I
for
can
me?
see them. Yep.
Okay.
I get the offline thing, but what if your class does not complete stuff online? The only way work gets done is if they are on Zoom and a teacher is looking at their work while they're working. Um, I probably would have to have a little bit more information, but if the only way students are completing assignments is when you're staring at them, I think we have some other conversations and setting some expectations for what's going to happen and how this will look. And I know students may be resistant, and I know there's some students that will flat out just check out just because they can and think they're going to get away with it. But at the same time, I think as leaders too, we have to set these expectations on what's going to happen, because seat time does not equal learning. Just because you're sitting there, just because we're connected, doesn't mean anything else is happening. So I definitely would want to look a little bit deeper into that. Savannah said, when we keep it simple or have things set to independent offline time, what is your advice on making sure that students are showing what they know so that we can determine what needs to be taught again or how to analyze? I'm a kindergarten teacher, so one of my biggest stressors through the school year is making sure my students are getting what they need. And God bless the kindergarten teachers who are connecting with these kids who aren't even reading yet and trying to do this in an online environment. I know that has to be extremely difficult. One thing that I think can help is working through some things, invisible thinking strategies, whether that's getting students even taking pictures of their work if that's possible. But talking through that, a reflection piece to me is probably the most powerful strategy to help students explain things. And I realize with the little ones, you're definitely going to have to coach them through this. So you may need to give them some guiding questions. Flipgrid has been one of my favorite tools in this moment, and it's fantastic for reflection. And yes, I have seen the itty bitties use it as well. So get them talking about their learning, talking about what they did, explaining what they did. I feel like that can be really powerful. What about schools that are expecting us to replicate the school day? Well, we've got some work to do, and that's happening everywhere. I know that, and I'm preaching so hard against it because I feel like it's a detriment to what we should be doing with our students, that we have to have fundamental shifts at a higher level. And I feel like the more we talk about this and the more we even give our administrators examples of positive learning in our classroom that doesn't necessarily happen in that synchronous, everyone at the same time environment, the more we can help them understand what we're trying to do. So it takes conversations, it takes being willing to speak up, And, it may even take, hey, check out this resource. Or I kind of went on a rant, y'all, on my podcast. I can't remember which episode it was. It was a few weeks ago, but I really just got to a boiling point. I was so angry for teachers because they were being blamed and mistreated for things that are not their fault, but also the shifts that we needed. And so that was actually the name of the podcast. I'm going to look it up here. 5 shifts we need in education right now. So if you happen to know any leadership who can benefit from listening to any of this, it is episode 82. So shakeuplearning.com/82, in defense of teachers, 5 shifts we need in education now. I have never believed that seat time equals learning, and I have been doing professional development for teachers now longer than I taught middle school. But so many schools, that's exactly what it is. You come to my workshop, you can sit there all day and do nothing and still get credit. And again, I don't think that's fair either. I feel like we need interactive learning and we need to demonstrate learning, not just seat time. So I think the more we talk about it, hopefully we can make some inroads with that. When instruction is asynchronous and students have so long to complete an assignment, how do you monitor data and differentiate efficiently? It definitely takes some practice. And depending on your grade level and what tools you have access to, whether you are going to have those check-ins. So if students are working independently asynchronously or they're working in groups asynchronously, this might look a little bit differently, but having those check-ins, again, Flipgrid, like have them post a Flipgrid after, if they've been given an hour to work on something, tell them, send them a little note that says 30 minutes in, you're going to post an update. You're going to let me know. But if you have the option to do some breakout rooms and things like that to check in, even if kids are working asynchronously, you can still have something in the background. It doesn't necessarily mean we all have our cameras on and we're all talking, but it could almost serve as like that teacher's desk where they could come check in with the teacher, or you could check in with your student just like you would walk around the room. So I think kind of finding those ways to facilitate that, keeping the lines of communication open through whatever tools that is, like a chat room or a discussion board or Google Classroom or Zoom, can help us find ways to connect and find out what's going on. So I think that was all. I think I got to the bottom of the questions. And I'm happy to stick around. I know everybody has to go and it's already getting late. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope these tips were useful. And I really hope that we can make some powerful improvements in what we're doing this year.
Kasey, thanks so much for being here. This was a great first webinar session, and to have you kick things off was a tremendous honor. I've been a big fan for a long time, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So folks, the poll question is up, and I see you're already starting to answer that. I did put the 2 links in the chat, the Facebook group link and the Google survey link. I will stay on for as long as I need to tonight to answer any questions. But as soon as you wrap up the poll, have a great night and have a great Thanksgiving, and be checking back because we hope to make this a regular thing in 2021.
Bye, y'all. Thank you.
Thanks, Kasey.